Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Shrine of Anubis. If you're new here, welcome, and if you have been here before, welcome back, and nice to see you again. So, I've been gone for 2 weeks. What happened? I don't know. To be honest with you guys, last week I didn't film a video because it was storming so bad that I couldn't. So I just prefer to keep the computer off and not use it while it's storming if I don't want to burn the hard drive like I did when I was 10 years old, about 17 years ago. 17, something like that. Anyways, so I hope you're doing well. I'm glad to be back. So, for today's topic, I believe the last video was about how to have an altar on a budget. So, for today's topic, we will talk about how to dispose of your offerings and when to change them. I feel that I may have addressed this in one of the videos that I have done in regards to offerings for Anubis, offerings in general, something like that. I'm not sure. However, again, I just feel like separating that chunk of information, turning it into a separate video for easier reference. So I suggest you to let me know in the comments section down below if there is something that I covered in a video that you would like me to address separately for easier reference. Do let me know so that I can continue to do this. So moving on to the topic for this video, how to dispose of your offerings. So the first point I want to make here, okay, so you have your altar, maybe not, but you do still have an offering regardless. Doesn't matter if it's food or drinks. How do you dispose of them? Now, it depends on the length of the offering. If it's been sitting there for several minutes, maybe a few hours, depending on the type of food, okay, that you feel that you can eat because it's safe to eat, then you can feel free to consume the offering after a little bit of time of sitting on the altar or on the dedicated corner that you have. So if it's a cupcake or something, I keep my offerings simple. So if you cook up a storm in the kitchen and you offer it to Anubis, for example, you may want to be careful with the type of food because it might rot after quite some time. Some foods tend to go bad very quickly within the same day. So you do want to be careful not to poison yourself with the food. So depending on what type of food you offer, if it's been there for a couple minutes, maybe a few hours, and if it's safe to consume, then you can feel free to ask for permission to retrieve the offering, let him know why you're retrieving it and what's going to happen to it, which is the consumption of it, and then you can proceed to retire the offering from the altar or the dedicated corner and consume it. When you consume the offering, if it's a drink, if it's some food, do make sure that you are conscious of that consumption. Don't just eat the offering, but make it an experience as if Anubis was ingesting that offering or drinking that offering. So I try to center myself kind of like a small meditation where I focus on the food and just putting in the attention and the focus on the offering, whether food or drink. And I start to consume it slowly, taking my time with it to savor it, to taste it, to feel the flavor and the texture of the food or the drink. Maybe it's the flavor, the temperature of the drink, what have you. And just be present with the offering, with the food, with the drink, and at the same time thinking about him as if he were consuming that offering through you. So that's how I personally do it. If I make an offering that I then have to eat or drink, I don't discard offerings because I'm lazy to go down the third floor, get out, find a place to leave it out somewhere for the ducks to eat, or the birds, or whatever. The squirrels sometimes show up, the crows as well. So I am lazy to discard the offerings outside. The second option of how to dispose of your offering is if you don't want to consume it, the drink or the food, you can either one, bury it, but if you live in an apartment complex like myself, which is number 2, you can always leave it somewhere in nature. If the food is safe for the animals to consume, you can leave it somewhere. So, for example, bread or, again, I don't discard my offerings. I always consume them. But depending on the type of food, if it's safe for animal consumption, you can leave it outside somewhere in nature, hidden within a bush, under a tree, even if it's exposed to the public. They're not going to know that it's you anyways. I don't like to litter, quote unquote. So it's rare of me to leave food outside. But typically I leave the offerings in a lake that's a couple minutes away from my apartment complex. So there is this huge ass lake with alligators in it. And so, I mean, I am in Florida, okay? I'm in Florida. So that sign, that alligator sign, as a side note, that alligator sign wasn't there about a year ago. And that sign was put this year. So I don't know what happened, but apparently that lake behind my place has alligators in it. So I don't know. So I do leave the offerings in that lake, not literally in the water, but in the trees around the area or the bushes in the area. Usually, typically, I do see a lot of ducks in that area, so I am sus about alligators because I'm like, wait, why are the ducks around here? Like, I don't know if they coexist with the alligators, so whatever. Point is, I do leave some offerings, sometimes, very rarely, outside where I know that the animals can't consume them if it's safe for them to consume, which is typically bread, maybe sometimes muffins, but not really. I don't really do that often, anyways. Because again, I am lazy to go down the third floor to go to the lake, which is like a couple minutes away from my home. Not get eaten by an alligator. Like, it's too much drama. But I'm just kidding. I actually have never seen a gator in that lake, so I don't know. That's how I dispose of my offerings. If I can't consume it because he tells me not to, and I just felt a very strong energy right next to me right now when I pointed to my right. And I know his statue is right here with me, but I just felt like, boom, like a hit of energy right now. I prefer to eat the offerings. Sometimes when he tells me no, I'm like, okay, what do I do with the offering? So since I can't bury it, typically he tells me where to leave it within that area of the lake. Sometimes he tells me to not go to the lake and to leave it elsewhere. There is this division with trees that separates our area from another area of other buildings, another complex with other people. So usually sometimes I go between that mini forest, and I leave the offerings between the trees or the bushes. Um, but again, it's very rare when I do. Now, you might be wondering, when should you change the offerings, or when do you have to change the offerings? Again, it varies depending on the type of offering that you make him. So sometimes you might leave him, for example, a wrapped up chocolate bar. So usually I leave it for about a week or two on the altar, and then I consume it. But if you leave something more complex that you know will get filled with ants, for example, like sweets, desserts, things like that, maybe sweet drinks, some kind of tea or something, uh, usually you can leave it for quite some time. A few hours is fine. And then you can go outside and simply pour it. If it's a drink, if it's a piece of food, you can either bury it or leave it somewhere. But it depends on the length of time that you feel is necessary. So I can't give you a specific time frame of when you should change the offerings and dispose of them, because it all depends on the type of offering that you make and for how long you think and feel is a good idea to leave the offerings in your altar or dedicated corner. So typically when I offer him a drink, I tend to leave it in the altar until it consumes completely on its own. Whether it's due to the air and the drink evaporating, I don't know. I don't care. I just leave the drink to evaporate on its own. Sometimes it takes about a week for the rum to fully disappear, sometimes 2 days. And it just, see, it depends. But when it comes to foods, which is much difficult for them to just disappear on their own, of course, typically you have to tune into your intuition and see when you feel is a good idea to change the offerings and discard of that one. So I can't give you a time frame in a nutshell. That's the whole point of this video. Bye. But going back to the topic, you have to be wary of what type of offering you make him, and if it's going to get filled with ants, you can always put the plate within another plate, surround it with water to try to cockblock the ants from getting into the food or the offering. But there may be times where that may not be an option. So leave them briefly in the altar and then dispose of them accordingly. So whether you are able to bury them or not, you still have an option of how to dispose of them. So if you can leave them somewhere in nature, as long as the offerings can decompose, if that's even the appropriate word for this. I personally would never leave something outside that doesn't decompose, dissolve, disappear, whatever, or get eaten by an animal. Because if it doesn't die, quote unquote, I don't think it's healthy for nature, if that makes sense. So but that is actually if you leave things such as wax from a candle after a working that you've done, that doesn't really it doesn't really destroy itself, and it just keeps and stays there. But I think foods can actually decompose or something, except McDonald's. So don't offer him McDonald's. I'm kidding. I just felt like throwing that out there. But yeah, don't offer him McDonald's. That shit will stay perfect forever. Goodness gracious. Um, and I'm not sure if he'll like McDonald's anyway, so I don't know. But I'm a little bit anxious today, so please forgive me. It's been a while since I was last here on this channel talking to you, so. But going back to the topic of how to dispose your offerings, you can either number one, consume them after a couple minutes, a couple hours if you feel it's safe, depending on the type of food that you leave on the altar or drink. Number two, you can always bury it somewhere outside, but if you're like me and you live in an apartment complex or you live in a house with very, nosy neighbors, then number three, you can feel free to discard them somewhere in nature, hidden within a bush under a tree where nobody can see you. Nobody will know where that came from. They probably won't even get near it because they're scared of some voodoo stuff, as people call random offerings outside in nature. I mean, people are weird. They think everything strange is voodoo. So if you're like me, then option number three would be best for you to discard the offering somewhere in nature, as long as the offering can decompose on the earth or be consumed by an animal and it's safe for the animal to consume, then you can leave it somewhere in a corner where it's safe for you to do so. Alternatively, though, a final scenario here that I didn't mention in the video itself, but as a fourth option, you can simply throw the offering in the trash. Now, there is kind of a debate on whether to throw offerings in the trash or not. Some people find it disrespectful to do so. I also find it disrespectful to do so. However, if you don't have a car where you can drive to a place where you can be alone to discard the offering because you live in a packed area where you don't have privacy, sometimes discarding the offering in the trash is your only option to do so. So, if that is your case, then let Anubis know why you're discarding the offering this way and take it away from the altar. And he will understand. Again, many of us don't live in fancy houses with a gigantic yard where we can bury all of our bottles of which jars of protection or whatever or offerings. Like, we don't have that privilege, many of us. So don't feel bad for not having that opportunity to simply discard an offering somewhere in nature next to your home, or for not being able to bury it somewhere near your home. So if your only choice is to discard it in the trash, then that's where you're at. And he will understand. And he won't mind if you're clear and honest with him and open about it. So as long as you have that communication with him and tell him, I wish I could do this or that, but my living situation is this, so this is what's going to happen. I hope you don't mind. He will understand. As long as you're clear with him and honest and direct with him, he will understand you and he won't give a shit. So in the end, he will actually have consumed the offering. So the offerings may still be there, but the energy within them was taken away already. So don't put too much attention as to how to properly discard the offering, because in the end, he will have already consumed it. So it doesn't really matter what happens to it after it's been consumed anyways. So feel free to choose an option that's best for you, that's safe for you, that's also safe for the environment to do so, and discard of it accordingly how you see fit. That's what I've been trying to get at. So I hope that made sense. I am so over the place on this video, so my apologies, but I hope that these 2 points were clear, and also to summarize on when to change the offerings. It depends on the food and drink and whether it's safe for you to consume them after a certain period of time or not. So, some things may take longer than others. If they are wrapped up, such as chocolate, you can leave them for longer in the altar, like a week or 2, depending on how you feel and the length that you feel you should leave it for. If it's something else that you made, homemade stuff, you may want to watch out for ants or other bugs that might try to get in the food, especially if you're offering him meats. You might want to check out for flies and such getting into your home. So depending on what type of offering, I can't really give you a time as to when to discard them. So that is pretty much up to you, for you to practice in order to find out when you feel it's appropriate to remove the offerings, change them up, and dispose of them. So in a nutshell, to summarize the second point, it depends. And it's up to you to tune into your intuition and figure out for how long you should leave this and that. So unfortunately, I can't help you too much in that area because it's all about your intuition. And of course, I love to inspire you to use your intuition and work on it and develop it, because we all have that sense within ourselves. So we just have to put in a little bit of time and dedication to develop it. So that's your assignment. That's your homework. And I think that is it for this video. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section. How do you dispose of your offerings? And when do you change the offerings? And what type of offering do you offer? Because I am very curious to know what type of offering you make and when you change that offering, depending on the type of offering that you made. So let me know down below in the comments section. I am dying, pun intended, to know your thoughts on disposing of your offerings and when you change them up. In my case, I kind of change them weekly. I don't really dispose of the offerings. I try to consume them, except the rum, because he already told me, no, I don't want you drinking rum. So I just let the rum dissolve in the altar on a tiny little glass shot or something. I just let it on its own. And I offer him sweets, desserts, maybe, for a few minutes, not really hours, because this home is full of ants. So I don't leave him sweets often. But when I do, it's usually for a few minutes and then I consume them, which is unfair for him. But typically I offer him wrapped up, not desserts, but wrapped up sweets, so that I can leave them for longer in the altar. And then, like the hoarder that I am, I take it for myself, like the selfish person that I am. So I keep it very simple, because my altar is really, really packed up. So I can't really leave a lot of things. So I try to keep it simple. Hopefully for now, hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to have his own room where it's all about him and anything and everything to do with him. So maybe one day I'll be able to have that opportunity, even if it's just a closet that I can use for him. That would be great to have. But in the meantime, it's just my drawer, the top of my drawer. But at least he protects my underwear, so I don't know. I mean, you got to work with what you've got. So, anyways, Let me know down below what you think. I would love to know your thoughts on how you dispose of your offerings and when you change them and what type of offering you tend to make and how often you change it. If you offer the same thing repeatedly, like I do, because I'm poor. So let me know. And before I forget, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click on the bell button, and click on see all so that you get all the notifications of any future uploads that I'll be making on this channel. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye!